Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Gary Teplitz. I'm going to walk you through a couple of items related to sort of safe and secure way to handle your computing environment and some other items. I'm the head of information security for the credit union and been here around 6 years or so. So I think with that, we can just get started, and then when I'm done, I'll hand it over to Paul. So our agenda today, I want to talk a little bit around ransomware, which of course is in the headlines frequently. I want to give you some insights around phishing and what to look for and how to prepare yourself for an onslaught of phishing scams. I'll talk to you a little bit about pretexting and safe browsing, and then finally, Internet of Things. So we can just move on to the next slide, and we'll get started. And so for a lot of you, probably this will be stuff that you know, but hopefully there'll be some insights that you can that you'll get from this to help you. So malware, ransomware. Malware is a term that's derived from a combination of malicious software. This is nothing new. It's been around for a long time. Ransomware, it's been around for years and years. Essentially, the bad guys are looking to extort you and to encrypt your data and do other malicious activity in your computing environment in hopes that they can leverage that to get money from you. And typically they will ask for payment via Bitcoin or something of the like. You might know people that have been affected by this. This is fairly common, unfortunately, and I think one of the most common ways that people get infected or have issues with ransomware, the sort of common attack vector primarily is through phishing, which is email delivered to you with the express purpose of tricking you into either installing software or clicking on links and giving away your credentials, which are then leveraged to get at your information and either encrypt it or steal it. So these things are becoming more and more sophisticated. The bad guys are continuously looking for new ways to deliver their ransomware, new ways to attack you, and it is kind of a constant game of whack-a-mole to try to stop these things. Let's move to the next slide. And so a little bit about more about ransomware. These are things that you can do to protect yourself. Backing up your files, that sounds pretty straightforward. Most people don't actually do it. So if you're not backing up your important files, please consider doing so. There's a little graphic here about 3-2-1. That's kind of a standard best practice sort of approach. You don't have to do this, but the experts will tell you to make 3 separate copies of your important data, your important files, store them on at least or in at least 2 separate locations, and then 1 offsite. So you might consider an external drive, like a USB drive, to back up your files. That's great. Do that. Don't store that with your computer, though. And also don't store it. Leave it connected to your computer. Ransomware guys will attack whatever's connected to your system. So a USB drive would get potentially encrypted at the same time as your primary system. If you are backing up to a USB drive, so we would recommend that you disconnect it and store it separately from your computer. I realize this is not an easy thing to do, but think about if somebody breaks into your house and steals your laptop, and that backup drive is just sitting right next to it, they're going to take that as well. One thing that I would highly recommend is using a cloud-based service to back up your files. There are a few listed here on the slide. If you do a search, you'll find lots of people reviews around these services and others. I think generally one of the larger ones would be the sort of right choice. They're not hugely expensive. They're not free, but they're not hugely expensive. Sometimes they'll offer limited size capacity for free, but generally you will have to pay something to use these services. Another item that I wanted to bring to your attention, there's something called controlled folder access in Windows 10 and 11. If you look that up, there's a way to turn that on. Basically, that prevents or helps to prevent ransomware across those folders that are protected. So your documents folder, as an example, would be included in that, and gives you a little bit extra protection. So if you have a chance to look into that, I would recommend it. Other things that I'm sure you've heard before, making sure you have some antivirus or anti-malware software installed on your system. Typically, if you're on a modern Microsoft Windows system, you probably have Microsoft Defender installed on that system. But take a look at that and make sure that it's turned on. It is possible to disable that. You will want to make sure that that's enabled, or you will want an alternative product to run on your system for that. And then the last point on here, in some ways, is probably the most important, which is make sure your software is up to date. Most software is designed to update automatically in the background, but not all. However, those again are controlled through settings, and so you could potentially go into the settings for your software and turn off the auto update. I would not do that. It's much better to leave that on and make sure your software is updated regularly. That's kind of your one of the key items to keep in mind when you're trying to protect your environment. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So a little more about phishing. Phishing is a form of social engineering. There are other forms of social engineering that we won't drill into too much, but generally there's phishing, and then one thing that's not on here is called vishing with a V. That's when somebody calls you and tries to convince you they are someone that you need to talk to. But in all these cases, and smishing is the same thing via text message. In all cases, the bad guy is trying to convince you that they're helping you with one issue or another. There are many variations on this, but typically, let's take phishing as an example. You'll receive an email, and in that email, there will be links and or attachments that the bad guy is hoping you will click on. And when you do that, if it's designed by a bad actor, you potentially will have malware installed onto your system, which could then go do things in the background that you wouldn't even know, like searching for names and passwords or stealing data off your system, and then finally potentially encrypting data on your system. So these things are happening all the time. You probably, whatever email system you're using, is filtering out tons and tons of this email you might not even be aware of, but still some get through. So our technology tries to keep up. Bad guys continuously change what they're doing. And so again, it's a cat and mouse kind of thing. One final point on this, artificial intelligence is making their job a little bit easier. So in the past, there's a lot of foreign actors that tend to get involved in phishing scams. And for a long time, it was fairly easy to spot these emails because they were not written well, they were not grammatically correct, or just didn't quite make sense for an English speaker. They've improved that over the years anyway, but now with usage of AI, they're able to craft these emails to be much better and much more convincing. And so that unfortunately makes their job a little bit easier. So let's move on to the next slide if we could. This is just so if you're the bad guy, you don't. It's kind of a shotgun approach, right? You're gonna send out, I don't know, thousands and thousands of phishing emails. You only need one person to say, okay, I'll take the bait. And so that's the idea behind this Dilbert comic. So let's go to the next slide. So here's some things that you can do to protect yourself. You should always, if you can, turn on multi-factor authentication, sometimes known as two-factor authentication. This is where to log into your account, you not only put in your name and password, but you then have to provide some other authentication component. Generally, it's a token. It could be delivered to your phone, or it could be through an app on your phone. But that is a way to protect yourself in general. So if you do fall victim to one of these phishing scams and somebody gets your credentials to an account of some sort, they wouldn't be able to use those directly because they don't have that other factor. So that is an important thing to consider. Your email account is specifically highlighted here because if you think about what's going in and out of your email account, all kinds of private information, most likely, that you would not want the bad guys to get access to. The other thing is that in some cases, the email account is used as a mechanism to reset your credentials. So you might have an account where it says, oh, I forgot my password. And you click here, and that password, or the ability to reset that password, will be sent to your email account. You don't want the bad guys to have compromised your email account. So if you can get two-factor authentication set up for that, highly recommend that. Another item that's really important is a password manager. So we live in a world today where you've probably got lots and lots of passwords. And generally what that translates into is what a lot of people do is they just use one or two passwords, and they use the same passwords across all their accounts. The problem with that is if one of their accounts gets compromised, then the bad guy has an ID and a password that is known to be good at a certain account or business. They will try that at everything. So they'll say, okay, well, we got Gary's ID and password for his whatever Gmail account. So now we're just going to use that and see if it works on his Amazon account or whatever. And so if you use the same password, that's not a good idea. So a password manager is essentially a vault in which you keep all your passwords. So you might have, 100 different accounts. You could create 100 different really strong passwords and keep them in your password manager. Password manager also facilitates the login process, so it can fill in your password for you in many cases. They're highly beneficial. There'll be very few ways you can manage all your passwords. If you kept them all different, you had 100, you've got to have them somewhere. So you don't want to put them on a piece of paper on your desk. You don't want to have a file on your computer with listing all your passwords. Password manager is a much better tool for that. The only thing to look out for there, or one thing to look out for there, is when you set up a password manager, you set up what's called a master password. That's the key that lets you into your vault with all your passwords. That needs to be a very, very strong password. And typically, password strength is mostly measured in the length of the password. I know that you'll see most places will say add a uppercase, a lowercase, a number, special character. Those are helpful, but actually the length of the password is more important. So you want a long password, a phrase of 3 words that you would remember would be perfect. That's what you're looking for your password manager. Couple other things to keep in mind. You want to keep your antivirus software up to date. I mentioned that sort of already, but that's a critical thing. But really, and when it comes to phishing, examine the email, make sure it looks good. I think we have a slide coming up where we'll talk a little bit about some of the indicators. But that's really the important thing. Don't, but be careful is kind of the I guess the message here. Don't click on links and open attachments unless you're fairly certain that they're good. That's the method that the bad guys use to compromise your system. So let's go on to the next slide. So this might be too small for you guys to read. I'll just go over a few things on here, but there are many elements to an email. The from, you want to look at that from address. Does it make sense? Does it look right? Lots of times that from address will kind of look like it's coming from Microsoft.com, but it's really coming from something Microsoft dot something else.com. So you want to look at that address and make sure that it's real. You want to look at the subject and the content to make sure that it makes sense. Mostly the most important thing is to ask yourself, are you expecting this email? Is this an email that you expected? If it isn't, then you need to be extra careful. You need to really think about whether you need to open that attachment or click that link. The hyperlink there, which is highlighted, again, I don't think you guys can see this so easily, but when you hover over that link with your mouse, you're going to see at the bottom of the window the actual location that you're going to go to when you click that link. What's written there in blue and underlined, it can literally say anything. That's not necessarily where you're going to go when you click that link. When you hover over that link, at the bottom of the page, it's going to show you the exact location that you're going to, and you want to make sure that that's correct. One other thing to think about here is, let's say you get an email from Amazon saying, "Hey, your new package is shipped, or it's been delayed, or your account's been charged $1,500 for buying whatever it is, and there's a link to go review your order." The natural tendency is just click that link, but you don't have to do that. You can just open up your browser, go to Amazon directly, and look at the information that way. That's a much safer way to think about how to react to those kinds of emails. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. A couple other items on here that I wanted to bring to your attention. So there's the term is pretexting. Really what this is more of a long game here, where the bad guys are going to try to make a connection with you, and typically they're done through something like LinkedIn or Facebook or any other social media solution application. The idea is to sort of build rapport, get your defenses will get down. LinkedIn, as an example, is a good case example here. If someone and these profiles, like on LinkedIn or Facebook, they can be fictitious, right? So that guy can just create a LinkedIn profile. He can claim to be the HR director at some company, or recruiter or whatever, and say, "Hey, I saw your LinkedIn profile, looks good. I just want to connect." and then over time, sort of build up that relationship and say, hey, by the way, there's an opportunity that you might be interested in. And I'm going to send you the the job description, give me your email address. So they've built up this sort of connection. And so your defenses are down because you know this person, right? I just told you to be aware, to be wary of people you don't know. But in this case, you do know. So these are things that the bad guys are leveraging to try to get you. So be careful around these connection requests and friend requests to make sure that they seem to make sense to you. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to detect whether these are fake or not. But generally speaking, if it's a brand new LinkedIn profile, there's not a lot of content. It's a good signal that this is probably fictitious. Safe browsing. So a couple of things here. One of the sort of newer areas that the bad guys are leveraging are advertisements like Google ads. They will set up a Google ad, they'll pay for it, and in the background, they've already set up a website that's malicious. So they'll put malicious content on it or links on it. And they're going to try to lure you into going to that malicious website. And so they might buy a Google ad. So you might be looking for, I don't know, shoes. I'm just trying to think of something, and you click in, and you do a Google search, looking for, a place to go buy shoes. They might buy an ad for that and stick it up there, and then you might think, oh, this looks like Nike here, but it's really not Nike. They've replaced the I with a 1, or it's Nike.shoebuy.com or something. You might get convinced that that's really Nike, and it's an advertisement. So it's going to show up at the top. It'll generally say sponsored. And so you'll click on that thinking you're going to Nike. And in the meantime, the bad guys have replicated a good copy of the Nike website to make you think you're landing in the right place. So again, another similar to what I just said before, you don't need to click on that link. Just go to Nike.com, and then you don't have to worry about clicking on the link. And then finally, make sure your browser is up to date. That is really critical. The browser updates come out frequently. Because the bad guys are always looking for ways to leverage vulnerabilities in your browser, because that's an easy way for them to get to attack. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So, Internet of Things. I'm sure you've heard of this term. It's not a new term. Pretty much any sort of device that plugs into your network, that's not a computer. Many of these are what we consider Internet of Things. So think about cameras, thermostats, smart speakers, TVs, all kinds of things. And there are more and more of these all the time. These things connect to the internet. They're designed for that. In many cases, like take cameras as an example, you can go remotely connect to your camera and see what's going on in your house, or control your thermostat or whatever. It's great, it's convenient, but all these things are connected to the internet now. What happens is sometimes these things need to get patched. And so there might be a vulnerability with your camera system. So the camera system needs to be updated. So generally what happens is you will get an email from, if you've registered your device, you'll get an email from the company saying, hey, you need to get this patched. So look out for those. The attack itself, I've got in here DDoS, which is a distributed denial of service. That is an attack where your system might go offline because it's just getting flooded with lots of connection attempts. That's bad, but it's not the end of the world. What's worse is if they leverage that connection, let's say to a camera or a smart TV in your house and are able to jump from that to other devices, which they might be able to do. That's the sort of scarier thing there. So we go to the next slide. I've got a couple of items to think about here. Keep your software up to date. So patches and updates to those systems are important to do on a regular basis. Your wireless router is one of those that needs to be updated. So if depending on the model and manufacturer, they should be alerting you to updates. You can also check online and make sure that you've got the latest version. A lot of these things, again, have auto update capabilities, so you want to keep those on. When you're setting up your wireless environment, there are different encryption protocols. So the data that transfers wirelessly from your device to the wireless router, you want that to be encrypted, and some of the weaker encryption protocols are easy for the bad guys to get past. You don't want to do that. You want to use one of the more advanced, so WPA2 or above is what you want to set that encryption level to. Well, another idea is setting up a guest network. So sometimes your wireless router supports multiple networks. So you can have your regular network where your computers are connected, computers, printers, etc. You can then set up a completely separate network, which is generally there for guests, but you can also use that for your Internet of Things devices. And so if one of those devices gets compromised, they're at least segregated on their own. They can't get to your computer system. And then finally, this is a big one. These things ship with default names and passwords. You definitely want to change those. There are sites on the internet where they list all the devices that they can find, and they categorize them like, here are cameras, here are thermostats, here are TVs that are accessible over the internet, where the default password and usernames are still enabled. So I can go to that site and look at a list of cameras where I know I can type in the default username and password and get access to that camera. So this is a really important, critical thing to do. When you get one of these devices, make sure the first thing you do is update the name and password for that device. If we can go to the next slide. So we're at the conclusion part of this. Be skeptical, be careful, be aware. These are seem kind of obvious, but it's hard to do sometimes. I know you get flooded with emails, you get things going on, but it's really important to look at these things carefully to make sure that the links look good and attachments are for people you expect to get attachments from. Phishing, don't take the bait. Phishing, again, I just want to emphasize that that's by far the most common method the bad guys use to compromise you and to get to your important information. So that's all I had. I'm going to turn it over to Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Paul Jockisch. I'm the CFO here at the credit union. And to follow what Gary just went through, I have a couple things, simple things to go through on our agenda. And that is some lessons learned, to go through a couple examples that we see every day in terms of fraud, people looking to do harm to you. And I think that where I would start before I get into some of these examples is just to emphasize or re-emphasize to everyone listening is that the fraudsters are trying to trick you. They are trying to concoct a story. They are trying to get you to take actions that you would not normally take. And so just talking through your normal financial life, if it sounds a little off, if it sounds too good to be true, listen to that impulse, because you'll see in some of these examples that if you were kind of listening to your impulses and just paying attention to anything outside the norm, you may be able to protect yourself from some of these scams. So on the list today is, again, to go through a couple examples from impersonators, account takeovers, similar to what Gary mentioned, how devices could be compromised. Romance scams still happen. And again, they are very effective to certain populations. And then just some takeaways to how to protect yourself. So with that, if we can move forward. The first example here is very common. This happens multiple times a day that gets reported to the credit union, and I'm sure other times that don't. But you're going to get a call from our phone number spoofed by a fraudster. This is our main number that you can find on our website. And they are going to pretend to be a representative from the credit union saying, "Hello, my name is Paul. I'm from Stanford Federal Credit Union's fraud department. I have noticed some activity on your account that looks unusual. I'm going to make this conversation sound as real as possible. And then I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to send you a secure access code to confirm your identity." All of this is sounding very real. Um, if if the person listening follows along and actually gives the secure access code to the fraudsters, that's actually the piece of information they didn't have, because somewhere along the line, they might have your username, they might have your password, but they don't have the secure access code, which is why they're calling you, pretending to be us. So once they have that access code, they're able to log into your online banking, whether it's through our app or through our website. And once they're in, they try to transfer money out through a variety of means, whether it's Zelle, if you have Venmo enabled, if you have a digital card enabled. There's lots of different ways to transfer money outside of your account. A couple takeaways just here on this example is that we've tried to emphasize for our members many times is, just because the phone number says it's from us, it might not be us. If something in the conversation feels outside the norm, it's always good to hang up and call us back. If it's real, you'll get a response immediately. And then ultimately, in the secure access code itself, and it's not just for Stanford Credit Union, but many financial institutions will actually say in the text message itself, do not share this information. It is meant to be entered into your app. It is meant to be entered into your online banking. It shouldn't be shared. There are times where us or a third party or other financial institutions may use a text message, but that will look very different. That will be a one-time passcode. And so again, this is a very common thing. And so if you're ever getting a phone call where it says, I'm from the credit union, I'm on the fraud team, I need some information from you, the likelihood of that being true is not great, because we have all the information. And so if it's ever feeling outside the norm, feel free to hang up and call back. If it really is us calling, we will not take it personally. Again, we'd rather have you safe. Okay, next item here. This is also very common. So this is a little bit to what Gary mentioned with a little bit of a different flavor. So this is where a member or a consumer is getting a phone call from tech support. And again, they'll usually use common ones that might be relevant to you. So a Norton consultant, or I'm from the Geek Squad, and I'm looking to fix an issue for you. I've noticed that you have spam on your device. I've noticed that you have a patch that needs to be corrected, and I need access to your device to fix this issue. And so through the miracle of technology, right, these people can use Teams, they can use Zoom, they can use a variety of methods that all of a sudden the user is sharing their interface with this fraudster. And then by doing that is giving them access through credentials to again move money out of the account. And again, in many different ways. And so this is another one that people want to believe what they're being told on the phone because they want to be protected. Yes, of course, I want to remove the malware. Of course, I want help with an issue with my device. But before you're giving access to somebody to your bank account through your phone or online, again, it would be better to just hang up the phone and call directly. Like if it's real, then the Geek Squad or Norton or whatever is going to have a record of that call. Okay, next case is, man, this is very popular as well. Again, scammers like to use anything that they can scare you with, anything that is going to feel powerful or important. And so, in a real life example here, a member gets a call from the IRS, and the person on the phone tells the member that the credit union is under investigation. Your money is in jeopardy. And if you really want to protect your savings, you should transfer it to a different government safe entity immediately, right? So again, this phone call can stretch over days. It can be very convincing, especially when they mention like, you're going to lose all of your savings. You're not going to be insured. They use important words that might scare you. And in this case, the member was convinced that this was true. They really were convinced that this was true. They went to a branch and they withdrew a lot of money, $50,000 in cash again. And they were told by this scam that again, right, the credit union wasn't safe. Your money isn't safe there. And so they kind of concealed the purpose of what the funds were for. And in a very elaborate scheme, these people were, they said, okay, because we're with the government, we know where you live. We're going to go to your driveway, literally to your driveway. And please give them the password, whatever the password is. And then we'll know that that's you. And they literally gave cash to these people in a car and they drove off with the funds. And I know this sounds like an extreme example, but it just lends to kind of building on the previous two of you're getting a call from the fraud department, you're getting a call from tech support, you're getting a call from the government, all with the same goal. The same goal is to get access to your money in one form or fashion. And so be wary of those things. If it really is the IRS looking for you, one, again, you can hang up on them too and call back. They will have a record of this. And if they were really concerned about the credit union, that's probably something we couldn't keep from you. So that would be something you would be made aware of. And so this is a very sad example of somebody losing money unnecessarily. Okay, couple more. Okay, so compromised devices. So this is kind of an intersection of kind of what Gary had mentioned a little bit earlier, but still using online banking for fraud. So this is if you're in a public space, member was using an unsecured Wi-Fi connection and they received a pop-up that their computer had been compromised and that they needed to call Apple Security on the number on the alert. Obviously, that alert wasn't from Apple Security, but in that moment, it felt real. And so this representative told the member that something was happening with their bank account. There was a fraudulent wire from the Stanford account, and they needed to get the remaining funds, again, to a different government entity for security. This is a very popular tactic, is it's not safe at the bank. It's not safe at the credit union. You need to move it somewhere else so it can be safe. again, and in that manipulation, they're usually told not to tell us or the other bank what the purpose of that wire is in this case. In the previous example, it was an ACH or for cash. And then the wire was actually sent to a fraudulent account, and those funds were liquidated immediately. And so in these types of cases, it's very hard to get the funds back, especially for something like this. A wire transfer is almost irreversible. Some cases it can be stopped, but usually if it's spent on the other side, you can't get those funds back. All right, let's go forward. A romance scam. So this happens more often than you would think, but somebody met somebody on Match.com. Sounds pretty normal. You're beginning an online relationship. You're messaging, texting, emailing, using the app for those types of things. You start to move those conversations away from the portal itself. You're starting to do things via text message. You're maybe having some phone calls. You might even be doing like some FaceTime or some Zoom video calls. At some point in this quote unquote relationship, you get asked to help your person that you're dating for help because my mom is sick, my dad is sick. I'm having some trouble with some money and I need to help my family. And because you've developed a relationship with this person, you of course want to help. And so in this case, the member went and got a cashier's check from a local share branch, deposited it into the person that they're dating into their account. And sometimes that will kind of be the end of the transaction. But usually, if it's gone on long enough and the relationship feels real enough, they're just going to keep asking for more and more and more. Like, oh my God, now my mom got sicker. Now I have to do some experimental thing. And the fact that you've been invested is definitely something that they're playing on because of course people want these types of things to be real. And if the first story sounded real, then why wouldn't the second part of it be real? And so again, this is more common than you think. And again, if anything, just be careful. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So I think that might be my last example before I get to some tips for everybody. Okay, so a couple things that are common in what I brought up is that you can protect yourself with a couple things. And some of them are simple and some of them are a little bit more complicated, but the simple ones I like for sure. So the first one is to monitor your accounts and report suspicious activity and let us know immediately. In a lot of cases, whether you got a fake text or you got a fake phone call or somehow somebody got access to your account, they don't always act immediately because then you can kind of tie those two things together. Sometimes the scammers will wait and then act. And so if you have a way to monitor your accounts, whether it's through the alerting mechanisms that you can set up for your cards and accounts, or whether you're actually just logging in every day to see your activity, you can report fraud as it's happening. You have protection when it's unauthorized transactions. So you are definitely a line of defense here to yourself. If you're not logging in, that's a problem. If you can't log in, that's a problem. This one sounds basic, but it's also very important. But you should, of course, not give out your username, password, or the secure access code that comes on your phone or your PIN to anyone ever. Again, I'm the financial institution. I have all this information theoretically, right? I know everything about your account. I don't need you to tell me your card number. I know what it is. I don't need logging into your account because I have the back office version where I can process transactions on your account and things like that. So it just protect yourself by not giving away these important pieces of information, because even if you give away one, they can sometimes reverse engineer the others. The third thing to protect yourself is to not necessarily trust a phone call, an email, a text, because it might not be from where you think it is coming from. Again, it's okay to hang up. It's okay to not respond to the text. It's okay to not scan the QR code, especially when it comes to anything involving the sending or receiving of funds, because if it feels wrong, it's hard to justify kind of when you're in the moment. But if it feels wrong, it's okay to just say, stop, I'm going to go to the bank directly. We added just the last time we gave this presentation, we didn't mention QR code, but that is a relatively new fraud tactic as well. So instead of getting a fake text message, you get a fake QR code that brings you to a fake website, that brings you to a fake login. And so again, just be careful, like, where did that QR code come from? Was it from my financial institution directly? Or was it through a link on a website? Was it through a random text message that I got? Again, just be careful from where the information is actually coming from. Again, this one seems simple, but it's okay to hang up and call back. That's something that we like to emphasize for all of our membership. It's always okay to just hang up and call back if it's not feeling right. If it's us, we're not going to be offended. And if it's not us, then you just saved yourself from a scam. So it's okay to call us directly. And here's a very important one too, that it's of importance to the fraudsters to get you to act quickly, because that's the reason why they bring up, oh my gosh, your device is compromised. Oh my gosh, there's been fraud on your account. Oh my gosh, the credit union is not safe and you need to move your funds somewhere else, because they're trying to get you acting quickly without too much thinking. And so when in doubt, seriously, just tell a friend, tell somebody what's going on, because saying it out loud sometimes will break the spell of, that doesn't sound quite right. I don't think the bank would ask you for that. I don't think that sounds like the government would actually do, because it might just get you enough to pause enough to save yourself from being scammed. Okay, I think we got one more on here. Yes, so a couple things, a couple additional things that you could add to layer protection for yourself. Some institutions, we do this. You can add a security word onto your account, add another layer of protection. Again, it's a random word that only you would know. You can definitely monitor your credit report. This happens in a variety of flavors. You can get a copy annually at annualcreditreport.com. There are a couple services out there that will monitor credit changes in real time. Whether or not that's helpful, again, monitor your account for sure in real time, but you can get your credit report as well as a backup. Kind of as an enhanced version of that. If you're worried about some sort of scam, you can also freeze your credit as well. It's free to do that. So nobody can take out a loan in your name and those types of things. This is a really helpful one, especially when it comes to trying to get scammed, is you can get informed delivery with the US Postal Service. So you get a preview of incoming mail. So if like you were looking for a check to be received, you would know it's actually in the mail. And then if you open your mailbox and it's not there, then clearly something happened. There's some additional resources here for you at identitytheft.gov, additional things for identity theft. But again, I think where I would leave as the biggest conclusion is, I know for us, on the point of view of a financial institution, is we spend a lot of time and energy and a lot of resources to try to protect you from fraud, right? There are all sorts of analytics running in the background, looking for anomalies, looking to send you a text message if it doesn't look right, looking to kind of put a security speed bump when you're in online banking, asking, is that really you? Asking, is this a registered device? There's a multitude of different factors trying to keep you safe, but ultimately the best protection is yourself. And that's where a lot of the scammers' efforts are directed, as you as a person, because if you let them in the door, it won't matter what kind of security is there if you let them in. So don't let them in. I think that is the end, but we've got several questions that came in over the last little bit, so we have some time to get through them. So let's go through them. John asks here, unfortunately, John, I'm sorry, your son was a victim of fraud. Do we have a reputable recommendation for legal counsel, a place to seek legal advice and representation? I think that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever actually been asked that. There are some resources that are freely available on the CFPB website, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. There's some links on there that if your son was a victim of fraud, that you can get it reported through the Attorney General of California, as well as the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. So there are some links on the cfpb.gov website. In terms of an actual attorney, I'm not sure if I could answer that, to be honest. Another question that I have on here is, and this one will be for you, Gary, if you register your device to avoid two-factor authentication, is that okay?
So registering your device means that the site that you're trying to authenticate to knows your device. So you've established that your device is okay and it is the correct device. And so what that does is if somebody tries to authenticate as you or log in as you on a different device, then typically that'll raise a red flag and that won't be allowed unless something like a secure access code or a two-factor is then delivered. So to answer your question directly, if you can do two-factor authentication, it is superior. But it is okay to do a registered device. That is certainly a viable way to protect yourself. But if you have the option, I would go with the two-factor authentication. It is a stronger mechanism to protect yourself.
Okay, we got a question in here about some of our postdoc candidates setting up a bank account with the credit union. Thank you. And how can you prevent fraud from the very beginning? So what I would tell you is there's a couple things that if I was a new member, a new customer at any sort of bank, a couple of the things that you can do right off the bat is, again, set up two-factor authentication if they offer it. So Face ID, some sort of authenticator to log into the account in and of itself. And then set up whatever alerts you are comfortable with. So most banks, including us, offer alerting mechanisms. So I want to be notified over a transaction over $100. I want to be notified over a credit card transaction over $50. I want to be notified if my account goes negative. Whatever your normal transactional patterns are, I would definitely look to do that because it can keep you a lot safer if you can react in the moment of what's happening. So even if somehow, some way they got into your account, you can respond a lot quicker and then you're a lot safer. Again, you're usually protected in those scenarios, whether it's by Visa or the credit union's fraud prevention. So that's what I would say right off the bat. There's a long list of things you could do too. E-statements is a great one too. There's no reason to have like paper copies of that kind of stuff out there in the world. But yeah, I would say right off the bat, alerts for sure. Let's see. To help with identity theft, does the credit union offer a shredding service? I do not think so. But that's an interesting idea. So thank you for that. And then we just have a comment in here. Can we get a recording of this meeting? Yes, we are recording this meeting, and I think we're going to share it with all the attendees. So yes, we can do that. All right. I think that brings us to the end. Thank you very much for joining us today. On the screen here today, we do have a fraud prevention website with several of the things that we've talked about today, as well as some additional information. This QR code is legitimate, or you can go to this website, sfcu.org/fraud prevention.